Okay. And go. Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and today I have something a little bit different for you guys. Generally, bomber gameplay in War Thunder is pretty, well, it's extremely simple and not all that rewarding. Fly to point, mash spacebar, rinse, repeat. So a lot of you guys, I've seen a lot of players at least, just kamikaze or J out of their airplane after dropping the first round of bombs, because if you're just grinding your way through War Thunder, that's the fastest way to grind, I suppose. But I've never really been the sort to just pay for those repair costs to fly a vehicle recklessly like that. Although I do like to be uber aggressive sometimes and die gloriously that way, just to give myself a chance to make something happen. So to catch you up to speed, we've already done one round of bombing. We picked off a base and we weren't fast enough to catch a second base before our teammates' bombs took them down, leaving us only with the enemy airfield to go after. And you've probably noticed that the airfield is ridiculously tough because, and I've talked about this in other videos, I think it's a mistake to make wiping out the enemy airfield and an automatic win scenario, because then the airfield has to be ridiculously tough so that it can't be killed, and then what's even the point of making it a win condition? It's obviously not a very well balanced system, and an easy fix would be to make destroying the enemy airfield make the airfield unusable for the enemy to land and repair and refuel on, which would have a serious impact on the air-to-air war. You could reduce its health significantly to make it possible to destroy it in 1 or 2 passes with a significant amount of bombs, which I feel is fair. If you don't defend your airfield, it should be able to be destroyed. And making it invulnerable until the bases are destroyed is still, I think, a fair thing, even if it's not realistic. Here we are making another pass on the airfield. This is the boring part of the gameplay. Things are gonna shift up for us at some point in this match, so just you stay tuned. It ends up being one of the closest matches I've played, and yes, it is possible, especially if you're in an extremely powerful bomber like this one. The Ju288C would be another one you can pull off these kind of shenanigans with, although we end up using, that's dirty. The glass is dirty. Thank you, Mama. We end up using the defensive guns significantly in this battle, and maybe not in the way you were expecting. So stay tuned for that. And again, this is sort of one of those battles that only this aircraft can pull off in just the way that I do here. Although the Ju288 is another one of those that's in the regular tech tree for the Germans and can do these same kinds of things at a significantly lower battle rating that you're about to see in this match. So a couple of heavy bombs on the enemy airfield does really a piddling amount of damage, because again, we've got to compete with things like B-29s and Tu-4s for just scaling how damage to the airfield works, and it ends up shutting out a lot of bombers, most bombers, from being useful in that meta. So here I am, returning to base for what is the second time, and I have some decision making to do. It's clear at this point that we've lost the air war. The enemy has a couple of fighters, and we are running out of fighters fast. I'm not sure, I think maybe we have 1 or so left, but it's just bombers for the rest. And this would be one of those rare times where, well, bombers are expected to carry the match. And it can be done. And judging from the pleased sound in my voice today, maybe you've guessed how this video ends up. But here we are, going high speed, low altitude, back to the airfield. I'm not quite hugging the earth here, which would be the stealthiest way to return to base, partially because I expect the enemy knows that bombers will be moving through this lane, so just moving at the fastest speed possible, which means gradually losing my altitude instead of scraping the earth, is probably best for me. And as you see, as I get close to the airfield, I am down at treetop level or lower, and here I am pulling off some of those incredible maneuvers you can do in, what's this thing called, Heinkel 177? I forget the name of this thing. I just think of it as the xenomorph. I really do need to make an alien custom camo for this aircraft. Custom camo definitely in the future for this thing, especially since right now it's an extremely fun vehicle to play. I did upload a sort of a meme video from it from last night, and today I played exactly 1 games of War Thunder. And I was like, I'm not going to make a video today. I'm exhausted. I have things to do later in the day. But, well, this match ended up happening. So now you're watching a video. To get back to talking about what bombers can do, there's a great guy that I highly recommend you check out on YouTube. His name is Hoppa, Hoppa, and he plays War Thunder. He plays a lot of the aforementioned Ju288, and he is a maestro in that vehicle. He makes it sing like a quality violin. And I highly recommend you check out ways you can make a bomber work for you. And one of his specialties is ground strike with bombers, which, if you've played the Ju288C, that's another aircraft that can perform these lightning strikes on columns of ground vehicles very, very quickly. The catch to that tactic, and well, we'll get into that in a moment, is that it takes a lot of practice and skill to set up your attack run for carpet bombing a column of ground vehicles in RRB. The damage model for bombs is not favorable to someone attempting to carpet bomb multiple ground units, and you might get 2 or 3 kills if your aim's not perfect. You will get none if your aim is poor, unless you're using massive bombs, in which case you can again only expect 1 or 2 kills. Now in our case, we get an air spawn when we repair and refit the aircraft, so we have no option to J out on the airfield here in order to refit the plane with bombs that are more suitable for ground strike. So I'm actually using a pair of the big boy bombs, the 1800 kilo big kabooms. And the downside is my targets that I've decided to go after. I've decided that looking at the map, reading the situation, I could try and take down the enemy airfield, but I don't think that I and the other bomber will be able to take it down in one pass, which is what we would need to do to win the match. And also, the enemy team's actually rather low on tickets, and their ground units have captured the airfield at A, or the strategic point at A. They say that they've captured an airfield, but it doesn't look like an airfield to me. Anyway, enemy tanks are clustered at A, so I've decided to take these big boy bombs and try and kill as many medium tanks, Sherman long 76s as I can, or 75s as I can. And it turns out, here they are, clustered so nicely, that number is actually not going to be a ton of Shermans I can take down, but 2 medium tanks does bring their tickets dangerously low. And I was just heading back to base when, well, something essential happened. Later in the match, and this is getting later in the match, ground vehicles spawn. These ground vehicles are lightly armored, and they're worth a decent amount of victory points if you just destroy an entire group of those ground units. So there's 3 groups, easily enough to win us the match. The enemy fighters are expecting me to be lurking near the airfield. They've been complaining, if you've been reading the chat, about passive gameplay and how it always winds up to being, some people avoiding combat at the end of the match. Little do they know I've been a busy busy boy, and you see that it takes quite a while for a bomber to make a difference in a match, and I definitely wouldn't have been able to pull this off if we hadn't already dealt significant damage to the airfield, destroyed all their bases, and gotten some other ticket loss to the enemy team. But this is the situation I find myself in. Bereft of bombs, but extremely quick and agile, if I can efficiently take down these lightly armored ground vehicles, or they're practically unarmored ground vehicles, with my defensive guns, we can win the match. The catch? There are at least a P-47 and something else, at least 2 enemy fighters in the area somewhere. Luckily, in my head, I suspect that they're watching our airfield, waiting for the second bomber to take off, waiting to pounce on whoever comes in to land, or just getting an eye on whoever's lurking in the area. Now that they're seeing ground targets being destroyed, they must realize that I'm here, but I suspect it would take them about a minute to get to my location. So this is actually some blood-pumping action for me. The adrenaline's really flowing. I have to be smart about this. I have to set up my attack runs and efficiently take these guys down. 1 or 2 passes is what I'm hoping for here. After 2 or 3 passes, the enemy fighters will be upon me, and there's nothing really that I can do against a P-47 in my condition. In a best case scenario, I have half a second to get a few shots at him before those 850 cals tear into me, and I hear an enemy aircraft zoom overhead. It is as I feared. Thankfully, he doesn't go after me. So that was the moment that decided the match. It looks like he was either out of ammunition or he just wanted to recover his fuel. My suspicion is that he was either extremely low on fuel or completely out of ammunition. So that would have been the end of the match for me. But getting lucky is part of those incredible matches, and unfortunately you do have to get lucky. You do have to have a perfect setup to get into a position like this in a bomber the way the game works right now. But when you do, bombers don't have to be spacebar simulators. You can fly low, you can ground strike with a lot of different bombers. I wouldn't recommend it in a B-29. I tried it a little bit back when their repair cost was not astronomical, and it was entertaining, but nigh unto impossible. However, with these ludicrous German designs where you have a 4-engine heavy bomber, there was just also expected to be a dive bomber because reasons. You have the opportunity to pull off ridiculous stunts like this, taking what is, for all intents and purposes, a 4-engine bomber into a ground strike scenario. So I could have played the entire game this way, but, well, it's a lot more dangerous when there's, hi baby, where there's half a dozen enemy fighters in your area. So the fact that there's one fighter who is too much at a disadvantage to engage us, and then another enemy fighter somewhere in the area, well, that made this possible. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed, and again, check out Hoppa's channel. He really takes this kind of gameplay to an art form. And as for the aircraft you saw in this video, well, there's a lot of things it can do, and that's a rare thing. I'd love to see more dynamic and exciting gameplay come to bombers, and for them to find their way into the meta of War Thunder. I think balancing bombers has been a serious issue for Gaijin, and frankly, they've been a bit ham-handed about it. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you in the next one. Bye bye.